We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you first to our friends of the library for supporting this program. And if you would like to support the Friends of the Library, I'm going to go ahead and put a link in the chat to their website. Thank you, Hazel Newlevant, for joining us this evening. Hazel Newlevant is a Portland-raised, Brooklyn-based cartoonist. Their comics include If This Be Sin, Sugartown, and No Ivy League. They edited and published the comic anthologies Chainmail Bikini and Comics for Choice. So we have an exciting evening planned. If you think of any questions you would like to ask them, we may have some time at the end for a Q&A. So go ahead and just put those questions in the chat. All right, go ahead, Hazel.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thanks for having me again. Let me just share my screen because I have a little slideshow for you. So this is a workshop about making Autobiog Comics, which is my main art form. And SPPL has some of my stuff collected apparently. So that is a way that you can check it out. But yeah, in this talk, I just want to use examples from my own work for like generating ideas for writing comics about yourself. This could also apply to, other kinds of personal work if you make zines or write personal essays or what have you. But yeah, I want to, share with y'all the starting points for some of my personal work as a way to generate ideas and try to structure that. And yeah, this slide is just a picture of some of the books I've published, including a couple of anthologies. And this is a picture, this is all different Autobiog comics. And I took this to just try to show the diversity of possible formats. It like the subject matter could be yourself, but as far as like what physically the comic is, it just depends on the idea and where it takes you. It could be something as simple as an Instagram post that has some words in it, or a mini comic, or something online, going up to books, filling a graphic novel even. So I have structured this in terms of story generators, like prompts that I can see how they've popped up in my own work and led me to interesting things, and things that I think anybody could potentially apply to their lives to think about what they might want to make art out of. So number one, things about your life that most people don't understand or that you often have to explain. So this is something that I can certainly see frequently in my own work, as well as the work of many other cartoonists that I enjoy. I've made comics about being unschooled because, that's definitely a minority experience, and something that, if I just say it in a word, people don't necessarily get the right idea. So there's a lot to unpack there. So I have made comics trying to kind of convey what that was like for me, including No Ivy League, which the library has. So everyone is welcome to read it. Bisexuality, hey, it's Pride Month. I'm sure everybody on this call is super up on all the sexual orientations, but I've had to have various conversations with my mom about it. So, clearly it's something that, people still have misconceptions about, or, there's like an experience that I want to convey there. So, I've just taken some of those and made them into comics, and then people have been excited about reading those comics. Trans masculinity. This is going to be very much the subject matter of a book that I'm working on now, but I've made a few comics exploring that are out in the world so far, mostly online. open relationships. Yeah, that was something where like I just wanted to see more of it in stories, like love stories with, you know, different people, but it's with more than two people, but it's not a who will they choose kind of scenario. And, you know, rather than going for fiction, I was just like, I can find a artistic way to present my own life. And then that's one authentic experience right there. So now is the portion where you brainstorm. Forgot to say up front that it would be a great idea to have some paper and a writing implement, but you could also do this on your phone or your computer. So I'm going to set a timer for 90 seconds, and the prompt is to start writing down ideas of things about your life that most people don't understand or that you often have to explain. So yeah, I'm just going to drink this water while everyone gets to work. And if you run out of ideas on any of these or just aren't into them, I would recommend drawing yourself, because that is an element of Autobiog Comics too. So if you get bored with a prompt, just like doodle a self-portrait. All right, 20 seconds left. And 10. And done. Okay, let's move on. Story generator number 2, experiences that have changed you as a person. You're different before and after IRL character growth. So it's a common like basic storytelling advice to think about who the character is before something happens, they got to deal with some shit, they end up as a different person at the end. That's a very simplified, inarticulate way of putting it. But considering that is something that readers, viewers of stories find sort of inherently gripping, it's also something that you can look for examples of in your own life and take people on a little journey with you. So yeah, this is an example from a mini comic, little story of how I became a gay cartoonist. This is from my book, No Ivy League, which was a whole transformative summer where I had this summer job pulling ivy, and it took me out of my homeschooler comfort zone in Portland. Deciding to dump a boyfriend. This was just something that I reflected on, like a crucial moment that was a turning point in a relationship. And so I found subject matter for a short story there. All right, now I'm setting a timer for 90 seconds. You brainstorm experiences that changed you as a person. You were different before and after. And it could be like the first time you tried such and such activity and realized that it wasn't so bad, or like how you got over your fear of horses, or how you got your fear of horses. I get a lot of these from therapy. This, I think, is a very therapy question, that trying to look back on your past and go, what made me this way? 30 seconds left. And 10. And that's it. All right, next one. Story genre number 3, stories you like to tell, maybe because they're funny, dramatic, suspenseful, or say a lot about you. So yeah, I find that a fun source for comics. Like just anything where you're like, oh, I got to tell you about this thing that happened to me. It was so, I just can't believe it. Or like, yeah, stories that either are like a part of your sort of repertoire of like things that you tell people because, you know, you think it's important as to them understanding you, or it, you know, could be just wild stuff that happens and then you want to make a comic about it. This is a little diary comic that I did from visiting my friend in Brazil. And I decided to start doing the comic because on the first day I like showed up at the airport only to discover that I needed a visa, which had never occurred to me. And I was going to have to go to the embassy and get a rescheduled flight. And I was just like, this is a whole time. It's going to have lots more twists and turns. So then, yeah, I did these big sketchbook pages for every day of the trip. Just, you know, diary comics are a pretty classic format, but I did this like mostly looking back after it was done, so I can think about like what were the most dramatic moments, or like what did I need to set up that was then going to have pay off on another day. It was nice to have a little perspective on that. So yeah, this is one about getting really drunk and my friend not telling me to go home with a woman in case she was trying to kidnap me. Getting searched at TSA, just a ridiculous situation that walking away from, I was like, this is about to be a really stupid comic so that I can tell people, so that I can express the whole ridiculous situation visually. All right, now you brainstorm. Setting a timer for 90 seconds. Stories that you like to tell. So yeah, could be wild things that happened recently, or like your best stories for parties, your best getting to know me stories, like, you know, something that's a real example of the way you are or how your life is. You can also try drawing cartoon versions of other people in your life if you get bored with drawing yourself. That was something I did as a teenager. I was like imagining a whole manga starring me and my friends, but then I kind of made it happen in bits and pieces. I just think it's fun to try to boil people down, or not boil them down, but it's fun to experiment with how you're going to portray people. And that's it. All right, next one. Times when your real life provided blatant metaphors or symbolism. So I don't know if this is really a way that I get new stories as much as like something that I apply after the fact, or while I'm working on them, but I always try to find the little heavy-handed metaphors because one enjoys that as a reader. This is from Chainmail Bikini, an anthology I did of comics about video games and role-playing games, all that good stuff. Little comic about playing Diablo 2 and how having your little party of all your guys fighting together is like how you need your friends to survive in life. Wow. A sub element of No Ivy League is that, it's invasive species removal of a European colonizing species. And, it's also about trying to investigate internalized racism. Well, try to investigate racism. I don't know if it counts as internalized if you're white, but anyway, that's semantics. All right, now you brainstorm. And I'm sorry if this is a difficult one, but if stuff is occurring to you as far as times when your real life provided some blatant metaphors, then, that's rich, that's good territory to go to, that's kind of stuff that people try very hard to invent. So if it's just, already there, then it's probably going to make something engaging. All right, 40 seconds. I guess my real theory of the case with all of these different prompts is that life is so vast. How do you decide how to frame it? What instances to talk about? Where's the beginning and middle and end? All right, 8 seconds. All right, next one. Anything else you feel inspired or motivated to draw a comic about? Need to get off your chest, etc. So this is the catch-all of if you have any old story about your life or thing that you want to do a comic about and it didn't fit into any of the above categories, that doesn't mean that it's not going to be interesting or worth doing. Anything, I believe that for me, like finding the really right ideas is hard. So, I have to follow that motivation or inspiration when I get it. So, this is something that I drew at 3 a.m. one day because I was thinking about relationships and I was like, just having a whole lot of feelings and imagining how it would be visually. And then it is a real comic because it's something that I scanned and put into a mini comic and published it. So it really exists. And this is like a very important conversation that I had with a friend about what makes a great guy. And just pretty much I ran home and then drew it in my sketchbook right afterwards, just because, it was impactful to me and I felt like it. And then it's a comic because this exists on Twitter and Instagram, and it's actually going to be part of a longer thing too. Another one of, I think I do a lot of these when like a friend really drops some knowledge on me and it really resonates me. I tend to make it into a little comic, and that's nice to have. It's a nice way to share it with people and get to, connect with the wisdom of your past a little bit too. All right. 90 seconds. Now you brainstorm. Anything else that you feel inspired to do a comic about? It's just really important to get things down on paper or digital paper, even if they're in an extremely rough format, because you can always build from there. And sometimes just the little thing in your sketchbook is all you need. But, you know, I'm a big believer in, don't just imagine it, draw it out or write it out somewhere. Like don't try not to censor yourself before you've even started. All right, 10 seconds. And done. Okay. Yes, that was the last prompt that I have for generating ideas. So now I'm going to talk about some of the other aspects of making autobiographical comics. So character design. This I'm just going to show you through my comics the evolution of how I draw Hazel as a character. This one is from when I was 19, and it was pretty much just trying to ape Brian Lee O'Malley's style from Scott Pilgrim. Like basically that was the whole thing, just trying to put me and people I knew in, like transposing that style. And, I think that is a great way to get the ball rolling. This is not trying to imitate the styles of any particular artists, but just an exercise I did in school to make black and white self-portraits in 9 really distinct looking ways. And it was a good exercise because that iteration caused me to hit on the that bottom middle one, which I thought looked really right. And then, since then it's become, very relevant to how I portray myself artistically. I made it into a little logo, considering that most of my comics are autobiographical. So that's kind of the through line. It's really that way of drawing the nose is what did it for me. And that's like the first mark that I'll make usually if I'm doing a drawing of my face. Yeah, and then this is some just sketchbook exploration for a comic about unschooler camp that I did. The first exercises in trying to draw my friends and, put everybody in a little turnaround. I'm not usually that thorough these days. I'll just start sketching stuff on the page, but it was good to do at that point for sure. So yeah, that's kind of, I think of that as like the start of the comics about my life canon. Like pretty much that way of drawing myself is then, and that way of, I guess, drawing people in general is then what I used in No Ivy League and Sugartown. I kind of consider this that's more or less the present evolution. This is just a little fun thing that I made after the fact. Yeah, I love thinking about the fashions that people had at different time periods and ages. And I think that can be a really fun exercise to like just think about what your favorite clothes were at a certain age, how you did your hair, especially if it's something that is out of fashion now or like seems kind of cringe. The more the better. And then this is like totally the same concept, but this is from the book that I'm working on now, which is called Queer and How We Got Here. And it's using these kinds of autobio stories as framing devices for aspects of queer history that I want to talk about. So yeah, a little journey through the ages there. And then sometimes you gotta revise how you're drawing yourself too, or you don't gotta. Some people decide on a certain, like the cartoonist Julia Wirtz, for instance. I think she like settled on a certain hairstyle and like standard outfit to draw herself in, and then that's just the stand-in regardless. But if you're doing it more realistically, like I changed physically over the last few years, and like my face was kind of shaped differently, so I tried to rethink how to do that as a cartoon, and then that translates into a new little logo as well, because that's what I'm using. Yeah, I personally, and this is like exploring for how I was going to draw my book, both style and colors. It's going to be just 3 different ink colors, Pantone colors, and then they're printed at different opacities, which I think is a really nice look, and it really speeds up the coloring. All right, so this is the start of getting things on paper and building from there. This is basically how I start all of my comics. Any of the ones that you've just seen is starting from one moment, by which I mean, like, if you can, take any image out of the story that you're thinking of telling and it's clear to you, just like, anything that really sticks in your head, just put it down on paper. And I think that's a good way to like not just have just like floating like character lineups are useful in some ways, but as far as getting the ball rolling for a story, I think it's really useful to do something where there's some like acting, quote unquote, and some of the setting or scenery. I think that just encapsulates things nicely, and it's a little bit easier to build on. So yeah, all of these are things that I pretty much just transposed into my comics. Often the starting from one moment idea that becomes a panel in the comic, and it's just something that's was clear to me in my imagination from the beginning. Here's another example from Sugartown. Kind of feel like the first drawing is better. It has a little bit more liveliness, but that's frequently that is frequently an issue. And one great way to deal with that is if you're sketching stuff out quickly and small, to just like blow it up and trace it, so then you don't have to start redrawing it from scratch. This is another example from No Ivy League. It's like one of the earliest drawings I did of like exploring what these memories would look like as actual characters in a setting. And this is starting with one moment and leaving it with one moment. This is a fun artistic practice that my friend Robin Chapman introduced me to. She's a really great comics editor. But yeah, she inducted me into diary tunes, which is like a thing where you make a mix CD that encapsulates your year in whatever way, like if it's your favorite new music of the year, or like the year in songs, and then also creating a cover for it. So yeah, this is like the starting one moment version of an entire year, just like what an image that stuck out to me. And I just, think even, just keeping it at the diary level, I've always thought that that's a really fun exercise to do. All right, many exits. So this is about the many different forms that something could take and be called a finished product, and how they're all valid and they're all, you just got to go with what the work calls for. And, not everything has to be a graphic novel. Not everything has to be the same level of polish. Sometimes the exit is a little bit earlier. Like this is just a drawing that is straight in pen. So, there's no like figuring it out in pencil underneath. And that was great as it was. I reprinted it in a mini comic. It didn't need to be redrawn or anything because it was just already doing it what it was supposed to. This is another one that I think was straight to pen in my sketchbook. So no preparatory pencils or erasing there. This is almost that direct. It's just leaving it at the pencil. Pencil as finished art is something that I think I saw the cartoonist Sam Alden doing it. It doesn't necessarily print well, which is why it's not such a traditional technique as doing things in ink. But yeah, this, I felt like it didn't need to be gone over, and there wasn't a lot of pre-planning. I would just do it panel by panel, boom, 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 so that I'm not smudging my hand and the pencils all over the page. Just having an idea of how the day went and how I might fit that into 12 panels in mind, but not going back and revising other than that. This is penciled first and then pen over it, but this was a short-lived idea I had in college of doing concert review comics by bringing my sketchbook to shows, which was very fun as an artist. I think it doesn't actually get across the music in a way that is very useful, but yeah, I'm glad I did it. I like how it looks a lot. And, so that's not a lot of revision, just pretty much taking the initial idea and layout and going with it. It's this similarly, I drew it out with pencil in my sketchbook, and I'm like, this looks good. It doesn't need to be rearranged. I tend to do things loosely like this, and then for something like No Ivy League or Sugartown, I would think about how to standardize it into panels. But as you can see, it can work in this free floating way too, which is, my current comic is a bit more like that, like not even trying to put things into panels. Or this short comic is something that I approached in a similar way, just like starting from one moment and going boom, 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 trying to get it all down. And then I just really liked the way that it sat in the sketchbook. So I used that as my page layout. So I took the sketchbook and enlarged the drawings. This is very common among cartoonists, is to, if you're doing art traditionally physically, is to do it at a larger size than it's going to print, because then you don't have to cramp your hand up as much doing all the tiny little things, and it looks tighter that way. It has a certain amount of detail and polish. But I mean, you don't have to do it that way either. Like you can do things at size, and then also you're avoiding maybe some unnecessary obsessing over details in a way that may not actually enhance the reading experience or somebody's experience of the story. I think that's a change in my art. Is in my earlier comics, I really wanted to impress people, for them to go like, dang, this person can really draw, like just like be impressed by the beauty. And now I'm more honestly doing the minimum to get the story across, because drawing 300 pages is tough and they don't pay you by the hour. But it's more like letting the content speak for itself, being like, people are going to be interested in this information or this story, and you don't necessarily have to put the bells and whistles on it of impressive draftsmanship. And this is an example of just drawing a scene out in a really free floating way and then redrawing it as panels for No Ivy League, just because that was the style I was doing the book in. And for most pages, it didn't go through this two-step, mostly I would just kind of try to visualize it within rectangles in the first go. But yeah, this was just a little bit of rethinking the layout. And also sometimes you need to do that because like there's just better ideas that you want to incorporate, or maybe the first version, it's really important that people be able to tell the reading order. And that's something that is not clear with the first version. So, here it is getting photocopied, blown up. I pencil it onto a piece of watercolor paper. Then I did just monochromatic black watercolor. It's just printed in a dark green ink. And it's lettered with a micron pen. And the inks I did with a brush, and I actually did those last. You can see that they're really mostly around the figure, and that's like gives it an interesting like depth of field effect. And it's basically because I was just trying to see, after I did the tones, what needed that extra definition. Yeah, and there more forms that the finished product could take. One of them is pure black and white, and in one of them I added a gray tone, which I'll see if I have an example of how I do that. And adding yet another step, taking the gray tone, putting the whole thing in Photoshop, and then the gray tone becomes this kind of purple shadow layer. So this is it's a more labor intensive end product for sure, but it just suited the story and the project for it to be that way. Full color watercolor is another thing that is a bit more labor intensive than just monochrome. Dang, I swear I had it. All right, I'm going to go back a little bit. I thought I was working off of another version of the slideshow because I did want to show y'all how I do these gray tones, which is actually, so I'm inking with a brush and India ink on Bristol. And then to do the gray tones, I flip the whole page over and put it on a light box. So I'm like seeing the line art from the front side, it's shining through. And then I just go in with a brush and I just kind of blob out, here's where I think the shadows should be. And I just do it that way instead of drawing it in Photoshop, because then, I find it fun working with a brush, doing the inks with a brush. And I feel like it integrates with the line work better. And also, there's a bit less opportunity to fuss. That's the nice thing about really inking things with a brush or a pen is, you have to do it a little bit laboriously, but, it's also kind of one and done. Like, the choice is made in a way that I think is not, it doesn't happen so much like that with working entirely digitally. Okay. You guys should totally follow me on social media. I will be, posting more about the book in progress there. I'm writing it and thumbnailing it right now, so there's not a lot of finished art to show, but sometimes I like to show like excerpts from the research that I'm doing. And just, yeah, it was great to have you all.